is from the Ramban, okay? The Ramban that you saw inside was questioning why he had to use the term nefesh. So what did you see from the term nefesh? What light did the Ramban shed on why it has to be not a person but a nefesh?
And it includes avadim and gerim because they are like returning to Judaism and like renewing their souls.
Right. Now, if it's just referring to a human being, a person, God can also bring a karma. But the idea that it's a nefesh that's impacted when you sin, and therefore it'll be inclusive of those people who become a part of Am Yisrael, who become part of Am Yisrael. And if any of you are familiar with different midrashim surrounding Matan Torah at Har Sinai, it wasn't just the Shishim Ribo that stood there at the foot of Matan Torah and were accepting the Torah. All of us were there as well. All of us were there. Even though we weren't present and alive at the time, our nefesh was present, and that is inclusive of all Gerim Avadim as well. They were also there. So you see coming full circle this concept of nefesh, kisach tavish tagam, mitzvot Hashem. But the nefesh has always been involved. It's not just about a guf, it's about a nefesh. Further on in our parak, you've seen already that there are 4 different categories of a karban chatas. And in these 4 different categories of the karban chatas, when we're introduced to each one, we have this situation set up of the possibility of there being a sin. Look at Pasuk Gimel, for example. In HaKohen HaMashiach Yaftah. If the high priest sins, if, right? Go a little bit further and Pasuk Gimel. V'im kol adas Yisrael yishku. And if all the congregation of Israel, shtaga, same idea, makes a mistake. Go a little bit further on, Pasuk Chav Zayin, nefesh achat tav shtaga, and if one individual sins. So we've set up the scene that there's a possibility that someone might sin. If you go back to the 3rd category of the Nasi, the Pasuk tells us about the Nasi. The Lashon is Chav Beis. Asher Nasi Yachtah. Do you see the difference? Asher Nasi Yachtah. There's no in. There's no conditional. Perhaps this might happen. It's Asher. How do you translate the word Asher?
That. Asher.
When the Nasi sins. Why are you condemning me? Like, why am I already in trouble? So if you look at Rashi picks up on this. Asher Nasi Yachtah. And he says the following. Asher doesn't come from when. Rather, who wants to read Rashi?
I can read it.
Okay, go for it.
Like, which pasuk is it?
Pasuk Chav Beis. Rashi Chav Beis.
Lashon Ashrei, so like the language of when.
No, so here, the pshat is Asher is when. What's Ashrei? Like Ashrei, Yoshrei, Yisachar.
What did you say?
Ashrei.
Praise.
Good. Okay? It's that's what it is. It's a praiseworthy language. Ashrei. Okay? Ashrei ha'ish asher lo lach ha'atzas v'sham tehillim. Okay? So lashon Ashrei, very positive language. Rashi, yeah.
Ashrei hadarsha nasi shelo nosin lahavi kapara. So we praise the nation when a nasi.
We're not praising the nation. Who are we praising?
Oh, the generation.
We're not praising the generation.
Hador nasi. Oh, the nasi of the generation.
Good. Because remember, that's the focus of the pasuk. The focus
Yeah.
of the pasuk is the nasi. So we're praising the nasi of the generation.
Shelo. Then he brought this carbon as a kapara of atonement.
No, he messed up, and
he wants to atone for
and
his sin.
he's admitting his mistakes. He's owning up to it. Okay, he's not trying to create, that never happened. I don't know what you're talking about. Okay, you see this in politics all the time. Like flip-floppers on different conditions of rules. It's interesting. I was going to teach this last week when it was the election. But anyway, I think it's still a message we're all going to understand, no matter regardless. So he says, "Kal v'chomer."
I'll struggle to accidentally. Kal v'chomer, all the more so. I'll that when somebody sins,
What's the maze as opposed to
would
the
be like intentionally.
Right.
What's the next thing? Shemeshamshin, Bilashon, ace, but it would be.
Well, no, don't worry, that's the next Rashi. Don't worry.
Oh, I skipped over.
Chomer is when he has kavod don't know.
Oh,
In other words, here, remember, the entire carbon process is predicated upon doing something b'shogeg.
oh, because this is saying when he sins, so.
Yes, so it's saying though he did it accidentally and he did kapara for it. Praiseworthy is the person who makes a misstep but owes up to it. Okay?
Or so if he did something intentionally and he.
So right, kal chomer shenecharei az donotav, that he'll feel guilty and he did it purposely. All right, that's Rashi's take. He takes the word asher and he turns it into ashrei. That while he might sin, okay, you're not going to get the possibility in, but rather when, but ashrei, praiseworthy, that here he is now admitting that he's done something wrong with bringing a carbon as a result. I want you now to look at the Ibn Ezra. The Ibn Ezra reads it differently, okay? The Ibn Ezra, asher nasi yaftah. Anyone want to read the Ibn Ezra? Go for it. Was it you, Leah? Or I just want to
I'm just asking you to wait.
Oh, you want to finish writing? Okay. I've been there.
Was this on the sheet?
Color code my.
I can read.
And
Was this on the sheet? No, right?
Is this?
no. This is us now.
Alphabet, right?
Yeah,
Okay. Ibn Ezra.
it's on the right side, on page Samach Beis.
Yeah. What is it?
Asher
Okay,
nasi
found
yaftah.
it. Okay, found it. Asher what? הפך וכן הוא אשר יכתב הנשיא והוא דבק באשר במעלה ועם כל עדת ישראל כאילו אמר ועם אשר יכתבו נשיא שבת ונשיא בית אב.
No, that's perfect, okay? Ibn Ezra takes a different perspective on the passage. He says, Asher nasi yaftah, when the nasi will sin, that how's the nasi going to sin? Well, he's this person who's in charge of the rest of Israel. He's their leader. Whether you want to see him as the king, as a president, okay, however you want to look at it. In other words, the Ibn Ezra says it's inevitable. It's inevitable that when someone is in a position of leadership, he will sin. So why is it asher? Because it's going to happen. It's just impossible for it not to happen, for it not to take place. Of course it's going to happen.
Wouldn't you do the opposite?
Okay, why?
Because the leader's supposed to be a role model, so you'd be extra careful not to sin.
Okay.
Like, it's inevitable that the average person is going to sin, but like the leader of the generation, I don't want to say it's inevitable.
Possibly know the laws so well.
It goes in Moshe.
Okay, so very good. So that's why the Sforno comes in now. Okay? So the Sforno has this idea that it's this position of leadership. And what do you mean he's going to make a mistake? Wasn't he put in this position because he's so worthy, because he could be the person to be at the helm, right?
Everyone makes mistakes.
Well, that's 100% true, okay? And I'll tell you about a song about that.
Like everyone makes mistakes, but it's inevitable that the leader is going to sin.
So let's look at the Sforno, okay? The Sforno goes more in detail about the nature of why a leader ends up sinning. So now look at Asher Nasi Yaftah, the Sforno. These are all very short. Rashi short, and then short, Sforno short, okay? Asher Nasi Yaftah. Sam, you want to read first?
I've tried.
Go for it.
I'll just go to
Wait.
Ansam Gimel. You see it?
what's the key?
Not you. You have different. You're special. Okay.
כי אמנם זה הדבר מצוות שיחת כאמרו וישמע ישרון ויבגץ ואומר בו והשם שמענו יכיר אונם.
Okay. He says, the Sforno points out over here that when it says he's doing the sin, it's what kind of sin? Bishkaga, right? He's doing it accidentally. And he says that when you're in a power, and when you're in a leader, I can't see it.
Position of
When you're in a position, yes, or a position of power, okay? However, way you want to describe it, that it's not that you'll make mistakes, because everyone makes mistakes. It's that once you're in this very high, resting on their laurels, and they think they're all that, and that's when you start to mess up. That's when you start to find blemishes in their actions. And what exactly do you find? What is it that me'atzmo yakir amano? So the Tziv piggybacks off of the Sforno. In other words, we're slowly getting different takes on this pasuk, and we're like opening it up and expanding it a little bit more. First of all, the idea that Nasi stands out differently than an individual or the Kal. Because the Nasi, when he's put in this position, it's first of all that he has culpability for what he's done wrong, and he admits to it in front of everyone. Wow, that's really something to be impressed with. Ashrei. And in fact, the plethora that you looked at earlier talks about the element of busha. Okay, and we'll stand upon this a little bit. But the idea of being embarrassed of what you've done, okay, is important. Busha is important. Busha is important. It's first of all a hallmark of any Jew. Okay, the Torah talks about how we're going to chasadim and we're rachmanim, we're also baishanim, and there's a sense of shame that we've done something wrong. And for the individual who everyone's looking at to admit that, Asher, that's Rashi. If an Ezra takes it a step further and says, listen, because he's in this position of leadership, it's inevitable. Sort of flushes it out a little bit more by explaining why is it inevitable. By Shema and Shema Vayikra. That when someone is finally, in a successful place, you tend to just let things go. You get a little full of yourself, and you forget about the fact that you have to actually work at it, and it's something that really, everything always comes back to like diets, right? Because if you're on a flow, you're doing well, and then, suddenly it's like, that you let it go again. You let it go because you've got too comfortable, okay? And in a position of leadership, you're at the top. You get too comfortable, and then that's how it becomes inevitable. But the Nitziv, which I sent you, it's in our group chat, okay? So if you look at the Nitziv,
do you have these kind of sheets for geulah babies?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll give you all the ones that
So we
you're
can
missing.
catch up on.
I'll get you all the ones you're missing, okay?
I'm so sorry about this soon.
Well, we'll send you, you'll get a video of it. Don't worry, you'll see. Okay. Girls, if you look in the group chat, okay, there's an Nitziv that I sent to you on Parakal Pasukot Beis. Asher Nasiach our magic words of the day, okay? Asher Nasiach. And he says, Yadua HaPerush, Dinisiuto Goremet, Shehei Aluchit. So he says, we've seen this already from the Ezra from the Sforno, they've intimated this, that when someone's in a high position, that causes them to be more liable to sin. V'kach k'tuv HaSforno. V'hinei od yesh b'nikra, Lashon she'inu mediyach ba. But he says, let's look at the pasuk. When the pasuk tells us that he's going to sin b'shraga, unintentionally, it's interesting that it's at the end of the pasuk. If you look back at the pasuk itself, it reads as follows: Asher nasiachta v'asa'achat mikol mitzvot Hashem elokav asher lo ta'asena b'shraga. Okay? Why is it that it's at the end b'shraga? It should be Asher nasiachta b'shraga. You sinned accidentally. Why is it all the way at the end of the pasuk that he did it b'shraga? And then the Sid says, if we're saying that someone's in a leadership position is going to be more prone to sin because it becomes too comfortable, because it's inevitable, what's the nature of the type of sin that he does? Normally, he never would have done this. He never would have eaten that, never would have gone there, never would have participated, never would have lived like X, Y, Z, so on and so forth. But it becomes something that he never would have entertained the possibility of, and now is a reality because he's in this leadership position and he feels untouchable. And he feels like, I can get away with anything. So even something B'shogeg he never would have entertained, he now is doing. In other words, normally you would never even have thought that this could be a possibility. It never entered into your thought process it would be something that you would do. It would never be something you ever would have entertained. But the reason why it's attributed to the Nasi is because even though you never would have fathomed doing it, inadvertently, it ends up happening. Okay? All of a sudden you become king and you are led astray. And we see this in Jewish history. Okay? We see this in Jewish history. But we also have to see the ashrei piece that Rashi mentioned. And I would use by example David HaMelech. David HaMelech he sees this woman on a rooftop and he desires her, and this is when he takes Bathsheba. Is she still married? Is she not married? Okay, the whole question, what's going on, what's happening and taking place between them. Big discussion in the Gemara. But he takes her and he sleeps with her, she becomes pregnant, they have a baby dies, right? And David is completely thrown. And then Nabi comes to him and he says to him, he gives him the whole mashal about the poor person, and he has one sheep, right? It paints a whole picture, and David's clear as day, this person is culpable, how can you do that to the other person, take advantage of him? And then the prophet turns to David and shines a mirror and says, this is what you've done, this is what you did. And what's David's reaction? What does he say when the mirror has been shone on him, that he sinned, that he made this mistake? Remember. It's one word that he says, but it's so powerful. Chatati, I sinned. Instead of trying to evade, instead of trying to run away from, deny, right? Which we do have in other episodes where someone comes, Cain and Hevel, right? After Cain murders Hevel, Hashem says, he says, Hashem can't give a straight answer, right? When Hashem comes to Adam after the sin of Adam and Chava, and he says, what he said, oh, you already ate this woman, right? Hello, you ate from the tree. Admit it. So we also see, as much as someone who's in this leadership position might be culpable and might fall prey to sin, and it could be inevitable, and something you never even thought of doing, you end up doing, okay? We also see that there's a tremendous power attached to that individual, of ashrei, that can you admit you've done something wrong? Will you apologize for it? Or do you just, keep your, head held high and not look down and not turn anywhere else? True leadership is the ability to admit that you've made a mistake and move on from it. Because we say, and when you're in a position of leadership, it's very important to recognize the pitfalls, but also then how you can be a tremendous role model in turning things around. There's a story told about Rosh Vayikra, that he was in Shir, and he was giving Shir at YU, and a student of his asked a question, and Rosh Vayikra was very well known to be very forceful in the way that he spoke. It was like a war of Torah, okay? And he says, you're wrong, what are you talking about, And the boy looked at Shir, a little embarrassed, not sure. And the next year came in, and Vayikra was sitting down at his desk, with his head in his hands, and sat there for around 15 minutes, just thinking. No one said anything. He stood up, he says, I don't know what the doctor's name was, I think it was Silverman. He says, where's Silverman? He was already eating lunch across the street. So one of his presents, Talmidim, took him across the street to Silverman. There he was in another restaurant, all of a sudden Rosh Vayikra walks in, everyone drops their spoons. And he walks over and he says, I was wrong, you were right, and I'm going to teach the Shir properly tomorrow. He couldn't go on with his day. He couldn't start moving on when it was bothersome to him that perhaps he did make a mistake in interpreting, and this young buffer in the yeshiva was the one who brought it to light. That can be very humbling. But he went and he corrected himself. That's true godliness. That's true leadership. In other words, as much as being in a leadership position could allow you to fall prey to sin, but it also, keep in mind the Rashi about Ashrei, the generation of that the leadership will be able to admit what they've done. And that teaches a tremendous lesson as well. It's very important to say, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, especially in leadership positions.